Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode. Today, I'm joined by a very, very special Phil O'Connor here to talk about all things Norway because there's certainly a lot of things to talk about in Norway. Phil, how has your morning been considering we just saw Norway had a pretty good game against Philippines finally?
It's been really funny because you're sitting there watching it and you're going, yes, okay, great, 6-0, and you're going through. And I can't understand how, some people, in Norwegian media, Scandinavian media, or in WOSO in general, are treating this as some sort of redemption for Norway because the same problem still exists. They came up against a team that, they should beat 6-0. They came second in the group, which to me, they should have won. So I'd be really, really careful in, like there's these great headlines, oh, Sophie Roman Haug, and she's brilliant, and everybody's so together. And I go, nah, that's not the way it looks to me, Mariam. How are you doing?
Great. Yeah, no, I think I saw a lot of the headlines and I'm like, let's calm down here. Let's not be fooled with the recency effect. And let's remember the lead up to this match. So I guess we'll start off with the match. I think for the Philippines, everything that could have went wrong for them went wrong. And thankfully, Norway was able to take advantage of that. We have seen them in various situations just simply not be able to take advantage of certain opportunities that presented themselves for Norway. What did for you looked a little bit different? Was it a lineup or was it a mix up that we saw get changed up a little bit in the midfield? But we saw a sense of togetherness. I think that's one thing that we certainly did see that wasn't present really since the Euros, was that sense of togetherness. What was it for you that kind of changed? What was the changing point, I guess, would say, in this Philippines game?
The changing point for me was Caroline Grom Hansen, and having her back in the team and in the starting lineup, and having her wanting to show the world that this was bullcrap. What happened the other day when she got dropped was absolute nonsense, right? And there's always a situation where you go, oh, the coach got it right. The coach got, no. The coach did what she was supposed to do, right? You do not take a Rolls Royce and park it in your garage, Mariam, which is what she did against the Swiss. And then they get a scoreless draw, and everybody's going, oh, well, no, that was just wrong, right? Let's just accept that that was wrong. And in fact, it wouldn't surprise me if today was the last day of Hege Riis's chance of ever having a decent job in the game of soccer ever again, right? She got it so wrong against Switzerland, and she literally had them playing, with the knife at their throat, as they say in Norwegian, like right here today. They needed to win this game by 3 clear goals. And who had to ride out to save her? Caroline Grom Hansen, right? Again, in the beginning of the tournament, when she tried to play Frida Monum and Ingrid Syrstad Engen together, didn't work. Who came in? Vilde Boerisa came in off the bench, and we had, as you said to me earlier on in a message, like a VBR masterclass, right? She owned that game. Didn't score, had probably the assist for the second goal, I think, to Sophie Roman Haug,
Mm.
but she owned that game, right? And the thing is, with a team like Philippines, they're going to allow you to have spaces and places, right? So they decide where you're going to get to play the game. Then it's up to you to get the ball there. And Vilde Boerisa does that better than perhaps anybody in Scandinavia. She has such a brilliant range of passing that's incredible. And she destroyed them. The Philippines made a mistake in that they allowed Caroline Grom Hansen to go one-on-one in the beginning. That's never going to work out.
No.
But also what CGH has that other players don't have, in particular, Emily Hovey has been terrible on the left for Norway altogether. Precision, right?
Yep.
The delivery, the quality of the ball into the box is absolutely everything, right? I've seen games played where you get 45 crosses into the box and no goals because there's no quality in the delivery. I would rather 2 good crosses, and then you see like the delivery that Grom Hansen had for Sophie Roman Haug's header, the second goal.
Yeah.
That was perfect, and like it was almost impossible not to score from that. The way it was, just everything about it was perfect. Thea Bjelda's ball. That demanded an awful lot. The first goal that Norway scored, that demanded enormous skill for Sophie Roman Haug to score that, and she did it, right? But as a striker, when you get the balls that CGH is playing into you, you go, yes, this is great. But I do think that, like, I think that there was something different about this team today. I think that there was a sense of togetherness, but I do think that they still showed a lot of the same flaws, right? The Philippines, when they got the ball and ran at Norway are all over the place, right? And the
Yeah.
major problem, I know we're looking back at the game now, but if we look forward very briefly to Spain or Japan, right?
Mm-hmm.
We still have a situation where on the left-hand side of Norway's back four are 2 right-footed players, right? Japan and Spain are going to destroy them if they continue with this, right? Because they can't play. They've no outlet ball up the line. This is why Guro Reiten is so isolated in the center.
Mm.
It's why the left forward, if you like, on this 3 that they're trying to play, in this case today, it started with Emily Hovey. They just can't get those players into the game. So that means that half the pitch is gone. Okay,
Yeah.
they can't get the ball into the half of the pitch. Tuva Hansen's passing has been desperate because she's been forced into
Yeah.
places and spaces where she does not want to be. And then you have Horviken, who's playing, as somebody once said, like she left the gas on at home. She just looks so nervous when she's going to her
Yeah.
left the whole time because she's so conscious of if she's the player to lose the ball, then it's coming straight back at her. There's no midfield, there's no Monum to help her, there's no Vilde Borisa to help her,
Yeah.
and Tuva Hansen is outside her. So that's a real problem for Norway. I don't think today was a tactical triumph. I think that this is what they should have done against New Zealand. I think, well, give or take a couple of changes I would have made maybe in the lineup and have a left footer on the left-hand side there. So, today I'd be really careful, the cheers and the joy and everything for Norwegian football. I know a lot of these girls. I like them a lot. I want to see them put themselves in the shop window. I want to see big clubs come with big fat contracts for these girls afterwards, right? But I'd be keeping the champagne corks in the bottles for now because I still see that there's problems coming down the road.
Yeah. It's important not to celebrate too early and actually still be able to criticize them. And I'm really glad you bring up that left flank problems, which is where New Zealand was able to get their goal in the opening game. Is there a fix for that? Because Spain and Japan most definitely are looking in that, and they're most definitely wanting to expose that flank and go after it because they know they can hurt Norway. Because every team who's hurt Norway has gone from there. Is there a fix for that, or is it going to be a problem that I think is going to be Norway's downfall, whether we like it or not?
It's a tough one, right? Because I mean, if you're trying to pick the best players, right? I've often talked about picking the best players in their best positions, right?
Mm.
And what Norway are doing now is they're picking their best players, but they're not in their best positions, right? So the person we talked about two players in particular when we spoke before the World Cup. One was Cecilia Fiskesland, the goalkeeper, who Aurora Mikkelsen was good today. She didn't have to be any better than good, right? I thought she could have done better with some of the goals that they've conceded earlier in the tournament, but still a very solid goalkeeper. I still think that Cecilia Fiskesland is a better goalkeeper and she should start. And the other player we spoke about was Marit Brattberg Lund, who hasn't been seen yet for Norway, right? Now, brilliant last year in the Norwegian League, playing for Brann. Not as good this year and has suffered from some injuries, but she has one thing that Tuva Hansen doesn't have and that Harviken doesn't have, and that's a left foot, right? And it's just, you don't have to be left-footed to play as a left back, right?
Yeah.
You don't have to be left-footed to play as a left-sided centre back either, but you need to be able to use your left foot competently, and you shouldn't be looking to always get your ball on the right foot, right? Because it's so easy as a footballer. I mean, what's the first thing you're told? It's like, okay, always try to get the player onto their weak foot, right? And it literally becomes a lottery. The statistics from footballref.com, fbref.com, from the New Zealand game, the two players in the Norwegian team who had the most touches in that game, Mariam, were Tuva Hansen and Horviken, right? And the reason for that was all the play was funneled towards them, right? That's the tactical plan that Norway had the New Zealand had, was get the ball towards them and then just live off their mistakes. And as you say, that's where the goal came from. But if you go back to England beating Norway at the 2019 World Cup at the quarterfinal stage, the goals came from the right-hand side. If you go back to every game, because they always struggled. That time it was Christina Minde, who now plays for Rosenborg. Fantastic footballer, plays a lot in the midfield. Better with her left foot maybe than those two that I just mentioned, but still, you need to have that certainty and you need to have that precision. When you can't afford to lose the ball in your back line, you can't afford to lose the ball in your own half pretty much. And that comes from not being comfortable or having players not being comfortable there. Is Marit Brattberg Lund the best left back? No, but she's left-footed, and that to me now trumps that, because we've had 3 games now. We've a pretty good sample size from the top tournament in the world. This isn't working. There's nobody can draw diagrams or anything else like that, or give me statistics that's telling me that this is working. It all fails the eye test, right? And that, like you said earlier on, right? The Japanese and the Spanish video analysts are going to be sitting there and they're doing this. And they're going, yay. Because Hege has now shown a complete unwillingness to make changes unless she's absolutely forced to. And the one change that she did consciously make in dropping Caroline Graham Hansen was an absolute car crash, right? So we're now looking at something where, I mean, I'd be smelling blood in the water if I was Spain or Japan. And I don't know. I honestly don't think that Hege is the kind of person. And again, she's one of these people that I rate her as probably the greatest footballer that Norway's ever had, male or female, right? But I don't know if she has the courage or the bravery, or sometimes it's the skullduggery to go and to change things in a way that Spain or Japan are not going to expect. Because I think she's going to say, right, this is our best team. This is what it looks like in training. You know, to change her back four now, I don't know if she's going to do it. To change the way that Caroline Graham Hansen and that Guro Reiten operate, I don't know if she's going to do it, you know. And of course, the last big change now is Sophie Roman Haug scored a hat trick today. What do you do when Oda Hegerberg is fit? Are you going to drop another one of the world's best players, or are you going to drop the hottest striker in the tournament at the moment, as of the opening round of the last round of games? You know,
Yeah.
these questions, and like, I would like to be Hege Riise at this point in time, and nothing tells me that she's going to take the decisions that she's going to have to take if she's going to make a winning, if she's going to have a chance of winning this last 16 games.
Yeah, the Ada Hegerberg news certainly was not Norway's ideal situation. Just nothing, again, ideal has been going for them. But also for Ada Hegerberg, she's also been a little bit lackluster. Like, we can't just sit here and be like, yeah, she's been a threat in front of goal. But we also have to give her props in terms of she just hasn't been getting that service, like we mentioned, of that midfield issues. Ada Her potentially Ada Hegerberg is out for the Spain and Japan game, then we know who Hege Riise can come out with. That front three line, and I think Japan and Spain both have had pretty good defensive showings. Are you comfortable that we're still able to see those goals flowing? And I know there's a big question on that service of how she lines up the midfield for those forwards to get that lineup going.
I think that if Norway play the way they played to this point, right, there's very little chance of them being able to score goals like the first and second goals that Sophie Roman Haug got today against Spain or Japan, right? Because she's just not going to be given that much space, right? For the first or for the second goal, she was in between two defenders, right?
Yeah.
And the best defenders in the world don't care about the ball, right? They don't look at the ball for the most part, right? They'll know where it is because, you know, they have the sixth sense of it, right? Well, what they're looking to do is to have you out of balance at the moment you connect with it, right? Nothing else matters, right? That's the simplest thing, to stop you getting clean contact on the ball. That's what the Japanese players are schooled in. That's what the Spanish players are schooled in. You'll absolutely get the ball, right? But it's going to skim off the top of your head, or it's going to come off your shoulder, or it's going to come off the wrong part of your foot, because they're there putting pressure on you, right? The second goal that was it Australia? No, the Canada scored against the Republic of Ireland, right? Who was it scored that game?
Adriana Leon in the middle.
So Leon gets the goal, right? You look at how close Katie McCabe is to poking that ball off her toe, right? Now go back to Ireland's game against Australia, and Marissa Sheva in the same position gave away a penalty because she didn't attack that situation in the right way. She ended up pushing the girl in the back, Hayley Rosso it was, and that gave away a goal, right? So a proper schooled defender like Katie McCabe knows how close you have to be, right? Now Leon, brilliant finish. Don't take that away from her. But if there's a hundredth of a second more in that ball is going over the crossbar because Katie McCabe is just getting physically into her hip so much that's what's going to happen. And that's the level you're playing at now, right? I was talking to somebody from FIFA this morning, and we were just saying that the last 16 here's a bloodbath, right? Every team that comes out of these groups, it's just straight in to the best teams in the world. You've got the USA, you've got Spain, you've got Japan, you've got Denmark, you've got England, you've got all these great teams. All of them know each other inside and out. They've been playing each other for decades, you know, and everybody knows what everybody else is good at. And for Sophie Roman Haug to have done this today is a brilliant lift for her confidence, right? Still a young player. I know she won Serie A with Roma this year and that kind of thing. She scored her goals there, right? But we're on a level where, as I said, I don't want 45 crosses into the box as a striker. I want two good ones that I can score from. That's it, you know? And this is what we're going to do. You're also, if you go up against Spain, right, they have every second of Caroline Graham Hansen footage. They know her better than she knows herself, right? And then it becomes even more important that Norway are lacking the width on the far side, okay? Because Emily Hovey, again, a fantastic player, and I'm so delighted that she's getting to start games here after what happened to her in France in 2019 when she suffered a very serious knee injury and it almost completely ruined her career. She came back, and again, player of the year, I think, in Serie A this season. But her balls in, even from the right when she played in the first game against New Zealand, but particularly from the left, have not been good, right? They haven't been the kind of ball. Strikers will tell you and wingers will tell you, wingers only when they're drunk and they're giving away their secrets, right? There's a difference between crossing the ball and crossing the ball, right? I can get a ball into you in the box with my left or right foot, but if it goes like this, right? If it's just going up and down and there's no pace on it, it favors the defender, right? If it's coming in swinging, it favors the defender unless it's extremely precise, as two of the balls for the 3 goals that Ireland have conceded have been, or the penalty that Ireland conceded have been. There have been these angled balls in there that are very difficult to deal with. Hovey hasn't produced those kinds of balls, right? Her balls are left foot inadequate. Her balls are right foot imprecise, right? There's been some balls ballooned over the bar and this kind of thing, and that's not what you need, right? Imagine Guro Reiten, as we saw in the last 10 or 15 minutes today, she kind of went, you know what, I'm done with this central midfield thing. Engen is there, Boadis is there. Boadis is not coming over the half. I'm going out on the left. I'm going to have me a party, right? And she goes out there and she created chances. She crossed, I think, for Roman Haug's third goal, if I remember correctly,
Yeah.
in the way that only she can do. But before that, she had the kind of angled ball in behind a retreating defence that I think she played one for Sam Kerr for Chelsea during the season, but she played it from like the halfway line. It was just an incredible piece of vision and skill to execute that. And she did that like twice in the last 15 minutes. And like she did that ball for us and then the cross for Roman Haug. And you're looking at that going, okay, that's a whole different ball game, right? If I'm Spain or Japan trying to defend against these two wingers, right? Gulreiter on one side and Caroline Graham-Hansen on the other, playing with what Johan Cruyff used to call the chalk on their boots, right? They're right on the sidelines. That's the hardest thing in the world to defend, okay? Because you're pulling me all over the field, because in two passes with Boris in the middle, that ball could be behind the other fullback, right? And then all of a sudden I have to play like this the whole game and something is going to go wrong, right? That's just the nature of football, is nothing goes right for an hour and a half. And that's what I struggle with so much, when you could shift Gulreiter up, when you could have Yuli Blackstad, who I think has been unfairly made a scapegoat, played the first 55 minutes of the tournament and then hasn't been seen again, may as well have been sent to Siberia by the Norwegians or up to the Arctic somewhere, you know. And that's the like, so that's where and these to me are obvious things, Mariam, because if I see them and if you see them, then Spain sees them and Japan sees them, but for some reason Hege Riise doesn't seem to see them at all.
Yeah, that's the $1 million question. And this game, certainly we could see that Norway figured out how to use their aerial advantages, because they've got some tall players, they've got some brilliant people or players who can receive those crosses, have done brilliantly in the box. But it does seem that it took a while for Riise to see this and implement it to the third game. We saw some faults in the second game of dropping Caroline Graham-Hansen, and we've already been told by the Norwegian media itself that there's been some friction in the locker room, and in some ways you can see that friction on the field. It's not really hard to predict of why this team is all over the place, and you can see the friction between the players and the tactics that are being given to them, or the lack of communication and tactics. How much does that actually affect the players, specifically in a massive competition like this, and when there's so much pressure on them? There's
I think just before we get onto that, right? One thing is that the Philippines, they were a little bit sort of, knocked around in their other two games, right? And I think that their limit had just been reached in the last game. They don't have anything left in the tank, which made it a little bit easier for Norway today to do what they did. But they've had a brilliant tournament, and I really do think that they're going to come back a lot stronger. But in terms of that team spirit and that belief, right? Because it's funny, they all came out in the mixed zone and the interviews afterwards. No, there's no problem. We all believe in Hege Riise. I go, no, I don't think you do. Okay, because you just when you drop Caroline Graham-Hansen, right? And there was an understanding that under Martin Sjögren, the Swedish coach who took Norway to Euro 2017, the World Cup in 2019, and the last Euros last year in England, right? There was an understanding that Caro was sort of treated a little bit differently. She was given a little bit of kid gloves. She was allowed an extra day to recover, and some people didn't like it. But hey, it's Caroline Graham-Hansen, okay? So you got to learn to deal with that. But no, I can't find or think of anybody in that squad who is ever going to say, like, for me, Carol can do absolutely anything. She's still the first name on the team sheet. Her and Ada and probably Mara Mjelde, still the first name on the team sheet, no matter what happens, right? And if she can't want, or she doesn't want to play, that's fine. But you've got to pick her, And I can't think. This is why I have such a hard time understanding why, Hege Riise is essentially exploding her own career now by trying to make an example of the best winger in the world, right? Forget all the things of playing players in a position and not seeing the obvious changes that could be made to help our team. That's just the dumbest thing I've ever seen. And if you do that, there's been talk in Norwegian media. And the thing is that the girls are quite accessible, right? So you can still send messages to players. There's still conversations that go on behind the scenes between journalists and between players there, right? All of it's off the record. But sometimes things like this leak out. Somebody says something, an agent says something, a sponsor who has been dealing with something says so. A teammate back at Vålerenga in Oslo has been talking to one of the Vålerenga girls. Now, I'm not saying that happened. I'm saying this is the kind of thing that can happen, right? And then all of a sudden it gets out that, the girls aren't happy with Hege, right? And they're not going to say it, okay? They're not going to come out. Tuva Hansen is not going to come to the mix zone and say, yeah, actually, we think Hege has no idea what she's doing. But hey, we're here now. Nobody's going to do that. The same thing with Vera Pauw, coach in Ireland. She's always
Yeah.
asked about her future. And the players don't exactly give her a ringing endorsement, but they're not going to hang her because they know they'll either be benched or, it's just not a good vibe. It's not a good way to carry on.
Yeah.
So they'll keep those things in-house. And that was what was so remarkable about Caroline Grom Hansen after coming on as a sub against Switzerland and then going nuts. And if you know Caro, you will know that was coming, right? She really is, I'm not going to say sensitive, but she's one of those people who is, her feelings are right, they're bubbling right under the surface the whole time, and it takes very little for them to come out. And she also has a tremendous moral compass, right? She knows the difference between what she thinks is right and what she thinks is wrong, right? And if she sees or if she feels that she's being treated wrong, everybody in the world knew that if she got on during that game and she had to go through the mix zone, that kind of, she was going to lose it. And she was taking no prisoners. And then to see her brought out the following day and made to apologize, nobody believes that apology. Nobody with a brain in their head is going to think that she's one bit sorry for what she said. But she says it because that's what you're supposed to do. Now, I think that what we saw today against the Philippines was a team that sometimes in the arc of a coach's career or in the arc of a coach's time with a team, they start off really well. Everybody has belief. Cracks begin to show, and then there starts to be a sort of personal fallout, or maybe she doesn't rate me, or she doesn't rate this girl, or she hasn't been fair to me, this kind of thing. Those cracks begin to show. You either deal with them or they get bigger. And now I think we've crossed over all that because of Hege's own goal in dropping Caroline Grom Hansen. What I think I saw today was a team that says, okay, you get to tell us the game plan, but we're going to go out there and we're going to play this game as we see fit, right? If we need to give the ball to Vilde Borisa deep, if we need to try to keep the ball away from our left flank because we don't have things there, because there was so much ball down there, even in the first 3 or 4 minutes today, right? Caroline Grom Hansen was given every ball in the stadium if she wanted it, and that to me is not game planning from Hege, because no smart coach is going to say, right, we're only going to go down one side. That is players saying, we can't be over there. Okay, the risk that the bad things are over there. This is the upside down over here in Stranger Things, right? We don't want to be over there at all. Yeah. And by doing that, what you now have in some weird way is this like Norwegian sense of the collective kicking in, that, okay, we're all just going to take responsibility for this. You do the things you do, but we're going to solve a lot of your problems for you, because eventually we're the ones who are going to be in the firing line if this goes wrong, right? It's always the players who get killed if they miss the chances, if they concede goals. And I think in doing that, then I think that it's kind of the end of the road for Hege Riise as the Norway international manager. I just don't see, because come the end of the tournament, if it had ended today, I think that either she or Caroline will be gone. And Caroline is the future of this Norway team for the next 5, 6, 7 years. Hege Riise, I don't think is, she can't be seen as the future in the same way. And that's just the natural way. And the president of the Norwegian FA, Lisa Klaveness, she's also a winner. And she's not going to see something like this and sit idly by and just let these things happen. So I think what we still have is a camp that is not split, but I think there's a lot of uproar going on there, and it's going to take leadership. The likes of Caroline Grom Hansen has now got back her mandate, right? She's now the woman. I don't care that Sophie Roman Haug scored the goals today, right? Caro's goal, and it was a brilliant individual goal. The skill to take that ball across her body and to turn and size up the goalkeeper and see her 2 steps too far to her left and to hit that as hard as she did.
Speed.
Unreal, just so brilliant, and exactly what you expect from her. And in that moment, she became the alpha in this situation again. I'm sorry, Hege, but Caroline is the one now that people are going to look to, right? Oda's always one that they're going to look to. Mara Mjelde is one that they're going to look to. So that's the power dynamic has shifted now, and it's gone back towards the players. And for the national team and for the fans, I think that's a good thing. For Hege's career, maybe less so.
A statement. And I think it was really funny in the media scrum. We saw this picture that I'm sure you've seen. It was Hansen on the microphones, and you could see like peeking on the side was Riise just looking at her, and it's all the journalists were looking at Graham Hansen, which I think is kind of like, yeah, everybody wants to listen to that leader on the pitch that's actually giving them the communication that they need. It's giving them the game plan that they actually want to work around. So I think we're slightly short on time here, but to wrap it up in terms of the round of 16, I think Pew and I previously said that they need to go far as at least the quarterfinals. In some ways, that's looking a little bit unlikely now. And it's not hard to say it's going to be a little unlikely given the circumstances and just given what Riise has done with the squad already. And you saying that this is going to be her last stint with this national team is nothing crazy and is nothing to not be expected. For that round of 16, what do you hope to see? And kind of, I guess, if we're a little bit more optimistic here, do they have a chance of beating whether it be Spain or Japan, or would this really need to be the Norway that we haven't yet seen to come up on the pitch?
I think when we talked back a couple of weeks before the tournament, Mariam, I said that anything other than the semi-finals will be a disappointment for Norway, right? You have 9 women in that team who have won the league with big European clubs and big European leagues this season, right? These are not also rans. This is not a bunch of girls from the club up the road who just been picked and are there to have fun, right? This team has the quality, right? But expectations change after the absolute garbage that they played and the decisions that everybody in the squad and around them made against New Zealand. And then the same thing to happen against Switzerland, that now all of a sudden just making it out of the group is somehow being seen as a victory. And I'm not having that, right? It may be good when you think of what's gone before, but it's an absolute letdown for what you've done. Like for what you should have done, or for what you're capable of, and for what you owe people watching at home, right? I think that they can beat Spain. I think that they can beat Japan, but I think to do so, they have to become the team that they should be, right? And that's mixing two things, right? I think they have to be incredibly physical, right? Now, in physical, I don't mean knocking people over and that. There's a certain element of that, right? But they have to run for one another, right? So what I've been missing a lot of the time is options and timing, right? In somebody making a run, sometimes if you're a winger, you have to make a run just to pull a midfielder out of the center, just to pull a fullback away from the center, just to create that little bit of space for a Caroline Graham Hansen to run into, or a Guro Reiten or Frida Mona to pass into, right? You have to, and nowhere does that show up in the statistics, right? There's no spider graph, or there's nothing, no assists, no nothing like that, right? But that sort of unsung heroism is what creates the space for other players to play. Other players see it and other teams see it. So, you're going to be seen, but you're never going to get your name on the back page of tomorrow morning's newspaper for the 10 great runs you made to pull them apart, right? And that's, but that sort of unselfishness, what's needed. They need to be switched on from the off, right? I still think that they absolutely need a left-footed left back, right? Tuva Hansen, move her into the center if you've got to, right? I think that she has an experience that Horviken doesn't have. She's done okay while she's in there, but I think now is a time for cool, calm heads to be in there. And just don't be afraid to just clear the ball, right? Don't be afraid to just get rid of it against Spain, because if you start giving away the ball the way that Norway have done against New Zealand, you're going to get killed, right? I also think that the time has come now for them to go back to the players that they were 3 to 4 years ago, right? To really trust that creativity, to trust in the fact that Guro Reiten has known Ada Hegerberg since they were kids, right? Caroline Graham Hansen played a Euro 2013 final when she was 10 years younger than she is now, obviously, with Ada Hegerberg down the road from me, 10 minutes from my home here in Stockholm, right? Let me see those players. Let me see the courage in them to take on a player, to look at one another going, okay, she's going this way, I got to go that way, right? To get that intuitive play back. And that comes from confidence, right? And coaches can do two things. They can either build you up to be the best in the world, or they can chip away at you so you feel that you're nothing, right? One of the things I object to with Vera Pauw as Ireland manager is that I think she instills fear rather than confidence. And a lot of what I'm seeing by Hege Riis's actions is doing the same thing, right? Now, when I talk about not giving away the ball on the edge of your own box, I'm not saying you're a terrible player, so don't do that, right? I'm saying this is not a good idea. You're good enough to pass the ball long with your right foot instead of trying to do something on your left foot, right? So how you phrase these things, how you set these things up in your game plan is absolutely essential. But what Hege Riise needs to do now is to trust her best players to be at their best, right? I don't really care about the result against Spain or Japan, right? I think we're past that point now for Norway. What I think that Norwegian football needs, and it's absolutely critical for the future of this team, is a performance, right? You go out there against whoever you get in the last 16 and you come home with your shield, or you come home on it. That's it. There's no more bullshit anymore. There's no more time for messing around. There's no more, oh, she picked the wrong plan. No matter what happens out there, you've got to go out there as a unit. In Norwegian, they call sterkere sammen, stronger together. And they haven't been talking about that the way they did in 2019. But that's what's needed from them now. And that will tell you and me and the watching WOSO world who they are. So it's all over to them now.
Guessing getting the best out of the best players will be the theme of that Norwegian team come the round of the 16 and even further the round of 16. Philip, I really appreciate you joining me here today, talking about a team that's obviously had a lot of questions around it, rightfully so. You've been doing some great live tweeting around a lot of the Scandinavian teams, specifically Norway, just like we saw this morning. I'm going to be leaving a lot of your links here for people to go and follow, but people heading your way, what are they expected to see from what you cover in your eye?
For what I'll be covering in Europe, I'm really still really sad that I'm not there. So I'm doing a lot of work for the
Yeah.
Reuters news agency at the moment. I'm still doing live Twitter spaces after the Ireland games, and I might continue to do that as we get into the last 16. Because, like I was saying to that person from FIFA this morning, this is a bloodbath now. So if you follow at Philip O'Connor, one L in Philip, two N's and an OR in O'Connor, just follow that and just keep an eye out for the Twitter spaces. And what I'm trying to do, as you know yourself, because I sent a request to you when you were busy
Yeah.
with one of the Canadian TV stations, but I'm trying to involve more people like yourself and try to involve more fans, and to try to answer some of the questions, because sometimes we're sitting on knowledge that maybe we don't even think that might be interesting for an audience. So
Mm.
hopefully I get to do some more live things with you. And before I go, I just want to say that so far you're my player of the tournament. You've been doing brilliant things here on YouTube. You've been picking up stories and that kind of thing that I haven't even seen. And then all of a sudden I'm following you and I get to see these things. So you keep that up, girl. You're doing fantastic
Thank
work.
you. I appreciate it. Ireland, Nigeria tomorrow. It's going to be an early one at Monday, but definitely head up to Philip, who I'm sure is going to be giving some great his takes on the Irish girls as they now head out with a lot of positives. Philip, I really appreciate you. Thank you so much for joining me. And I'm sure we'll have you back on very soon, either to talk about Ireland or the Norwegian girls.
Thank you so much for having me, Mariam. A pleasure as always.